Hey, what's going on, everybody? Lee Dickey here, and today I want to take you guys through the story of how I got started writing and recording and traveling on this whole entertainment journey. Let's chase this, get up on stage, have your name up in lights, sort of, and entertain as many people as possible kind of dream. So, without further ado, let's not waste any time and jump right into it. Here we go. So the whole story of me getting into entertainment and writing and recording really all started the first time I got on stage, which was back in 1995. I was about 6 years old. Tiny little thing. I was about 2 feet shorter and about 150 pounds lighter. Tiny little guy I was. But that's pretty much how I got started on stage and entertaining crowds. And I fell in love with it instantly. I mean, I've told this story before, but I was involved at my first elementary school. We were putting on a Christmas play for our parents, and I think we were all cast in different parts. My part was part of the 3 blind mice, and I had to say one word 3 times. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Surprisingly, I didn't win an Oscar. No Academy Awards for me. Boo earns. But I kept with it, and I'm still doing the entertainment thing to this day. And I started writing and recording music. Well, I would like to say not too long after that, but it was about 7 years later where I picked up an instrument, because going through elementary school, after I left the elementary school that I performed in that Christmas play at, I went to another one, and music obviously is part of the curriculum, but for the first, say, from grades 2 through 6, it was all sort of vocal music, and pretty much there was a part where we had to put, I think it was one year we had to make a shaker out of things that you would find around your house. So say a canister of some sort, like a Pringles canister, or a water bottle that you'd fill with rice or say chickpeas and then just decorate it and something like that. That was another thing that we had to do when I was in school, just doing the whole vocal music thing. But the writing process really started to take shape, I think, in the 7th grade when we got integrated into instrumental music, into band and that sort of thing. And initially I wanted to play the saxophone, but I couldn't pick the case up off the floor. It was too heavy. So I switched to the trumpet, although the teacher I had at the time wanted, I guess, we had 3 trumpet players in the elementary school band, and he wanted at least one of us to come over, or at least change and then play the flute. But I really didn't want to, because I mean, when it comes to a flute, you have to, I'm not discounting anybody that plays the flute. If you do, then great, good for you. But I knew when it came to me, I couldn't really blow air across the hole, because that's how you get the sound. In a flute, you blow across the hole. I couldn't do that. So, I mean, for some reason, it was totally foreign to me when it came to blowing air across a hole to make a sound, and my lungs didn't have the capacity at that time to just keep blowing across a hole. Plus, I preferred the trumpet. I mean, it had 3 valves and an open position. It was very, I don't want to call it simple, but it was simpler to me than the flute. And it was there where we learned all about sheet music and reading music and that sort of thing. And that's basically the only formal training in terms of music that I have, is anything that I got in school, elementary and high school. But I think when we started, they taught us all about reading music and what sheet music was, what time signatures were, that sort of thing, and tempo and other stuff, and 4 beats to every bar, common time, different time signatures and stuff like that, flats and sharps. But it was there where, we got to sort of learn how to write music, like compose it and sheet music, that sort of thing. And I started writing sort of little solos, or I would just mutter around on the valves on the trumpet that I had back then. I actually still play a little bit to this day. I actually have one. And, I'll still mutter around on it and come up with certain musical bits and pieces. But that's where the whole let's compose music and start writing musically came into play. The lyrics came in a couple of years later, I'd say maybe a year and a half to 2 years later. I was 14 at that time, and it was right at the end of my first semester in high school. It was right at the end of my first grade 9 semester. So I was young, I was like 14, and at that time it was the very end of the semester. We had finished exams, and it was the last day. I think we were getting our marks or something along those lines. We weren't doing anything class related or anything related to the curriculum because it's the last day. What are you going to do other than maybe watch a movie if your teacher so chooses to just chuck one on and go, here, waste a couple hours watching this film. But we were just sitting I remember that there were a group of us sitting at the back of the classroom, and I had a whole bunch of foolscap paper, which is that extra long sort of lined paper that you would write essays on. Back when I was in school, laptops and computers weren't really a thing yet as much as they are now, so you still had to take out a pencil and piece of paper and write stuff down. So that's what I did. I had a whole bunch because it was a semestered school. I had 4 classes that semester, and I just started writing lyrics. It was like the end of one bar would rhyme with the end of another bar, and so on and so on. I knew nothing. It was just like, let's just put out as many rhyming bars as we could, or as I could at that time. I had no concept of a verse, or how long verses should be, what a hook was. I had no concept of that. I mean, it's gotten better now that I've kept at it for all these years, but at that time I had no concept. So I just kept writing lyrics upon lyrics upon lyrics, and lines upon lines upon lines with no hook. It was just continuous rhymes after rhymes and after rhymes. It was just something that I would do to sort of take my mind off things that were going on around me at the time. And my first piece lyrically that I ever wrote was actually called The Perfect Girl, and it was about this girl that I had a crush on, a super crush on this girl, and she rejected me pretty soundly. But you know what? I mean, not that much has changed now, because they all still reject me pretty soundly. Like, hey, you want to go out? No, that's cool. All right, then I'll write about it, right? Even now. But so the first piece that I wrote was The Perfect Girl. I wrote it about how I felt about this girl, and word got around the school. Some of my teachers came up to me, some of my classmates and other students that I knew were all like, oh, so you wrote about this girl, blah blah blah. And then it turned into this thing. Thankfully it all blew over. It really didn't, it wasn't a big deal after a little while. But I would sit, I remember that the day that I started writing, I was at the back of the music room. I had a music stand in front of me, had a whole bunch of foolscap paper that I'd taken from my other classes, because I just stuffed this stuff in my bag. It was just, initially it was going to be for another essay or other stuff. And I just pulled the piece of paper out and started writing words and, sentences and bars and rhymes and stuff like that. And to this day, I've stuck with it, Granted, I've learned more in the time that it's been since I started, but that was it. I mean, I wrote this thing called The Perfect Girl, which ended up on a very crudely recorded demo that I put together maybe 2 or 3 months after I started recording or something like that, or after I started writing, pardon me. And it was something, because when I first started, I was a teenager. I was 14. My hormones were everywhere. Obviously, you notice girls or whatever, you notice what you're into, you know what you like, or you begin to start to like certain things on Susie who's sitting next to you or whatever. And clearly, like, I don't want to say every song was about a girl, but it was about, she has red hair or her blue eyes or anything like that, or any sort of features that I found that drew me to the muse of the minute. I suppose that any inspiration at that time was about a girl, and I suppose the muse of the minute, or I don't want to call it the missus of the minute because it's not like I got married back then, but the muse, and most of them were women or young girls and stuff like that, because I was 14 years old. I mean, what else am I gonna think about at 14? You're going through your teen years, your hormones are everywhere, and I suppose they're supposed to be. So, I mean, almost everything I wrote in the early stages of my lyrics were about the girls that I had my eye on, or the girls that I was crushing on, things like that. As I got older, as I progressed through, say, high school and even into college, I started to pay attention to more, because you grow from that 14-year-old kid who's just, girls, 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 cue Motley Crue, put that song in right here. But you grow from that, and you stray a bit, and you start to pay attention to more things. So when I got to about grade 11 and grade 12, a few things caught my eye, and I'm not trying to glorify this or anything, but there were a couple of mass shootings in the US that for some reason, and politics or anything that has had to do with, say, like a mass shooting or whatnot, it's not that they've interested me, but it's just something that you can't help but pay attention to, because it's everywhere, and nobody likes to see, the amount of people that lose their lives in mass shootings, because anybody that dies, I guess, for a senseless matter is, it's upsetting, of course. So, grade 11 and grade 12, I think the Virginia Tech thing happened, and I ended up writing something about that took me many years to finish, or at least get it to the point where I felt like it was finished. It took me about almost a decade to finish it. So it was one of those things where I would initially jot my thoughts down. It was meant to be a tribute piece. One of those things where I initially would jot my thoughts down, and then, case of writer's block, I moved on to the next thing. But I think it was sometime maybe last year or the year before that I came back to it and managed to finish it. I found, because I keep all my lyric sheets. I have all my original lyric sheets still to this day, and that's about almost 14 years worth of work when it comes to lyrics. So I came back to it and finished it off. And maybe one day I'll record it. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I guess it's things like that that really made me think about things that were going on in the world. I'm not trying to make light of a mass shooting or 32 to 30. I don't, just the mass amounts of people that lose their lives to these mass shooting incidents that seem to happen more often than they don't nowadays. But it's things like that where I just sort of sat back for a minute and started paying attention to, what was going on in the world, other places other than my own home, or, Canada, just other countries around the world and places of that nature. I also did a tribute piece for the Aurora, Colorado shooting that happened about 5 years ago, nearly 5 years ago now. And I recorded that one because I had access to some royalty-free samples, and I put a quick little piece together and sent it out, and it was well received. But starting the whole lyrical process, again, it was just foolscap paper, a ton of it that I had from other classes that I had been taking that semester, and I would just start writing down my thoughts. When it came to actually putting these words to a CD or a record, or recording them, my setup for that was super Stone Age. It was caveman like, even for the time period that was. The technology wasn't quite there yet, because when I first started recording, it was 2004, mid to late 2004 is when I started recording my own lyrics. So, and my setup at the time, I had a Dell Pentium 3. It's basically a brick. It's useless nowadays. It's a dinosaur now. It was top of the line at when I got it, which was 2001. But nowadays, it's basically all I had. All I could use now is the tower, and it still works. But the tower is basically something that you would see in a Rocky movie montage of him just sort of training and whatnot, and the setup was, because it was a Dell desktop, and the setup, it didn't have any USB port. Well, it had a couple, but USB microphones weren't really a thing back then. They weren't really readily available. The technology wasn't there. So the setup was, my monitors, technically, if you can call them that, were just the computer speakers that were jacked in with a 3.5 millimeter jack into the back of the computer tower. It's the same thing with the microphone too, because it was, I think my dad bought one of the first computer microphones that you could get. It was one that you would stick on top of your monitor, and then the cable would just go down, and you would jack that into to the microphone port, which again was on the back of the computer. And it was very, very, very crude, very super caveman like, and that's how I basically recorded my first say 2 or 3 demos, demo records, shall we say, or demo CDs, demo tapes, whatever you want to call them. It was very, very simple, and that's how I keep my setup nowadays. Everything it's under the KISS rule. Keep it super simple, and that's the way I like it. But when it came to actually recording things, I didn't have any recording software, so, and I really didn't have any original music. So what I would do is I would find the instrumentals to popular songs that were on the radio, or even some instrumentals to some songs that were a few years old at that point, and I would record my lyrics to those instrumentals through Windows Movie Maker. And keep in mind, this is 2004, and I'm running on a PC that at the time is about 3 years old, and I think I was running Windows Millennium Edition, which, to be completely honest, was not that great. So I had to record my vocals on in Windows Movie Maker on top of instrumentals to previously released hits by other artists, and it worked. It got me noticed, but when it came to getting the right level and the right mix, I got lucky. I had to get lucky. There was no such thing, to me anyway, back then. There was no such thing as mixing. I didn't have any, I'm actually recording this story right now from a USB mic into my laptop through Audacity. Audacity, I don't think even existed back then, or if it did, I didn't know about it. But I couldn't really, get the right level or the right mix. I just had to get lucky. Like I had to, I don't want to say scream, but I had to perform with a lot of energy all the time, or, perform at a top level all the time, and just hope that my vocals would overpower the instrumental. And there was pretty much no such thing as effects. I think I added like a fade in and a fade out, and that was it. Like I had to figure out, all right, where am I gonna cut this thing? I think you could do that in Movie Maker at the time, and then fade out. For, I think, the first album, shall we say, that I put out, or the first demo tape that I put out, had maybe 10 or 12 tracks on it, maybe less, around maybe 9 to 12 tracks, something like that. And I kept doing that for the first 3 years I was in high school, and I'm still writing to this day, but the setup has gotten better. I'm now recording through a Samsung CO1U Pro USB condenser USB microphone, which is probably one of the better mics that I've ever used. So probably the best of the ones that I do have, and it's a lot of fun for me still. The fact is, I'm still having fun with it, and like, my setup has gotten better over the years, but that was the first setup where it was just an old Dell computer tower with USB ports and not having USB musical equipment available at that time. So I would just have to, jack stuff in with a 3.5 millimeter jack into the back of the computer tower and hope for the best that my mic levels would overpower the music levels. I couldn't even monitor my vocal levels at that time because, there was such a delay when it came to my speakers. And even then, like, my setup was, the speakers were set up in, like, they were too high for me to actually reach. They were too high. The cords wouldn't reach the headphone jack and the speakers. So I just said, forget it. We're gonna go full bore with the speakers going full blast with the music, and hope that my levels my vocal levels are higher than the music levels at that point, and just hope for the best. And you know what? Yes, they were crude recordings. They were super simple, but you know what? They worked for me, and it got me noticed. It got me known in school for doing stuff like that. And to this day, I'm still performing, I'm still writing, I'm still producing, and I'm still entertaining, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So that's the story of my first, or of how I got started writing and recording all those years ago. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you'd like more of these, I will gladly tell you more stories from my life, whether it be entertainment related or music related or anything else. I will tell you these stories through this microphone and through this setup. It's been a lot of fun for me. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys enjoyed all of it, or if you enjoyed any part of this, please comment, like, share, and subscribe. Of course, you can always buy my music on iTunes. The links will be below. But you know what? That's it for me. Thanks for listening to my ramblings and how I got started writing and recording. Thanks again. I've been Leigh Dickey. This has been another video on Leigh Dickey Beats and Speaks. But we will see you guys next time. All right, Leigh Dickey signing out. Peace.